Yes, guys, welcome to the next lesson. So now that we're finished with bonds, yields, and everything related to that, we're going to be looking at some economic drivers. So if you remember back to our first lesson, actually, you remember this? So the thing we've looked at, we've always talked about, the monetary policies. We've discussed fiscal policies, central banks, what they do to put the brakes on the economy. We've talked about the inflation side of things, but we haven't talked too much about the productivity. Of course, we've talked about GDP, CPI, everything like that. But when it comes to productivity, you need to understand the different types of economic drivers that occur in the economy. So the main types actually. First two that we've already looked at is GDP. So just to briefly explain every single one, and then obviously I'm going to explain how to find all the information. GDP is from the Department of Commerce. It's one of the most important economic drivers, and the information is released quarterly. So you're going to be seeing information like GDP QOQ, which means quarter on quarter. Then you've got GDP year on year, which is YOY. Then you've got CPI and PPI. Of course, as we know, that's the consumer price index, producer price index. And then the other one that we looked at was PCE as well. If you remember from a few lessons back, that's what the Fed funds rate sort of council uses during the FOMC meetings. So this is released by the Federal Reserve. It's a measure of inflation, and this data is released monthly, around the middle of the month. Next, we've got employment figures. So this is released by the Department of Labor, and then usually you get this all this data released on NFP Day, which is during the beginning of the month. Obviously, we've gone through NFP previously, but it's the first Friday of every month. And usually it's one of the biggest news releases that you see in the Forex market. It creates some of the biggest swings at the time, hence why I don't recommend to trade NFP news, especially if you are a beginner and obviously you're still learning and figuring out your strategy. Now, the next point, industrial production. So again, this is released from the Federal Reserve and it's released every month. Every economic driver that I'm listing at the moment, if you actually go onto, what's it called? Let me just bring it up 1 second. Oh yeah, Forex Factory. If you go onto Forex Factory and you go down every single day, you're gonna see all of these things pop up, and you'll understand now. Okay, so now I understand what it is, I understand where it comes from, what it means, and then how it impacts the economy. Next thing is home sales. So this is from the Department of Commerce. It measures contracts on new and existing homes. And again, this is released monthly. As you can tell, a lot of this data is released monthly, so that's why we've always got to keep on top of it. And of course, next relating to home sales is the construction spending. So again, from the Department of Commerce, it's a measure of the amount of construction that occurs per month. And this is again released monthly. So you might be wondering, why do we even look at things like construction spending? Now, the main thing is because the construction industry takes up so much of particularly imports, the import market and, employment and everything like that. The more construction that's going on, you can understand, okay, now we're seeing more economic growth. There's more stimulation within the economy. Next thing is the consumer spending, again from Department of Commerce, and it's a measure of how much consumers can spend. Now, these are usually averages between the general person of the population. Of course, this is quite hard to sort of quantify in a way, but they also release it for different ethnicities, I believe, as well. And this again is released monthly. And then the last one is retail sales. So this one is would usually come up, I believe, as an amber folder on Forex Factory. You're going to be seeing it quite often because, lots of stocks and companies, they release their sales at that time. And what it is a measure of the sales in various sectors and usually groups it as an average. Of course, this is one of the best indicators as well, understanding is the economy growing at the time, because, it's all interlinked and related. If you've got more increased sales, you can also expect higher consumer spending. Now, if you're seeing some kind of divergences at the time, they might be leading indicators. So you can understand, okay, if we're reducing retail sales, can we also expect consumer spending to drop as well? Then when the data is released, you can see, ah, yes, they're both dropping at the same time. Now, note, the key bit of information to understand is how the economy is doing and where it is heading. So these are all the key economic drivers that we will look at, but sometimes some of them carry greater weight than others. For example, on the 28th of July of this year in 2021, we had the FOMC meeting where they stated that they will consider a taper announcement if they see progressive data in the employment figures. They specifically hinted at the employment figures. Therefore, over the next few months, the employment data, the unemployment, and the rest of the NFP data that is released in the first week of every month, it's essential to understanding the direction of DXY. And here's one tip I always give: think smart in fundamentals and know where the attention is. The only way you're going to know this is by actually doing your own research. Well, of course, I'm going to be doing my fundamental breakdown, so that's going to help. But always keep reading articles, always understand what the Fed is doing. You know, what are other central banks doing? If you're focusing on GBP pairs, then of course you're going to be looking at what the Bank of England are doing, and all the key representatives, what they're saying in their meetings. Are they looking for employment figures as the Fed is, for example? Now, when they particularly, highlight one bit of the economic drivers, in this case is the employment figures, you must always consider that as at the top of the hierarchy of all of this. So of course, consumer spending and retail sales is going to be important, but it's not going to carry as much weight at the time as the employment figures. Now, in terms of links to websites, I'm going to be releasing a document soon. I'm thinking in the Discord group to actually keep a section of just important links. This is going to be the links to the websites where you can get all this information. Generally though, you can always find it on Forex Factory when it comes out, and then there's usually a link to the website where it comes from. So guys, I'm going to be updating all of this very soon, and there's a few other economic indicators or economic drivers that we actually look at, but these are the main ones for now. If you want, do your own research on them as well. But essentially, it's just all the different points. You get a bunch of data releases at the time. You've got to understand: are we seeing economic growth, or are we seeing some kind of deflationary conditions instead? Anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next video.